Good afternoon. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome. I'm going to slide over here. Welcome to Resistance Live. Didn't have my chair in quite the right place this morning. It's Elizabeth Cronise McLaughlin, and it is the 14th of November, 2023. I'm coming to you, as always, from occupied Tongva land here in Southern California. Today, for our visually challenged viewers, I am wearing a tweed jacket over a black shell shirt. My hair is pulled back. I have my big gold hoop earrings in, and I am a pink-skinned, green-eyed, dirty blonde-haired woman sitting in my office with a plant and a big chair behind me. Welcome. So we've got, I saw already, Sweden, Brighton in the UK, Utah, Spring Valley, California, Midwest Indiana, Steinbeck country, hello Michigan, hello Missouri, hello Portland, hello Chicago. We've got a big bunch of people coming in this morning, and I'm really glad to see all of you. Okay, there's been as usual, surprise, surprise, there's been an enormous amount of breaking news in the last 5 minutes. This seems to be happening just kind of like while we're getting ready to go on the air. So let me just start with this, okay? We're going to talk about the released tapes from Fulton County, which are the 4 proffer tapes of the former co-defendants who flipped on Trump and the remaining defendants. But there is breaking news that literally just hit to the effect that Fani Willis has renewed her emergency order prohibiting the disclosure of witness testimony in advance of trial. And what that tells us is that these leaked tapes did not come from the prosecution. The best speculation now, within the last few minutes, is that the tapes were released by someone on the defense side, presumably to target the witnesses that have flipped. I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be the case. It doesn't make any sense to me here, honestly, that the prosecution would release their own proffer tapes for any reason. They have nothing to gain by that. And in fact, what it does is it sort of previews what that testimony might be at trial. So something has happened here that is not entirely ethical. And we already have a gag order on Trump in Fulton County as a part of his conditions of release that prohibits him from discussing witnesses in the case and engaging in things like witness intimidation. But these tapes were released anonymously by who knows who. And that's a very serious consideration in light of what we know to be the targeting of figures who are opposed to Trump by his own base. So there's going to be more that shakes out on this. I'm 100% sure of it during today's news cycle. However, the tapes themselves, the information that was in them, we saw for the first time late yesterday, and then we saw the tapes themselves late last night. And I just have to say, what's contained in these tapes is profoundly damning to Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani and Mark Meadows and others. As I was reviewing them and reviewing the reporting on them, I was completely taken aback by the information that is contained in those tapes that we never knew before. And that includes statements by Dan Scavino and by Mark Meadows in confirmation that they knew after their legal challenges in court had failed that they were without any further legal remedy. And indeed, this is part of what Jenna Ellis offered up in her proffer tape. And nonetheless, Scavino told Jenna Ellis that it didn't matter because they weren't going to leave anyway. That is possibly the clearest intent that we have seen so far of the RICO conspiracy at issue in this case. And, we are going to have considerations around hearsay on some of these statements. So I want everybody to be prepared that whether or not statements that say what other people said are going to be admissible in court has yet to be litigated. There's going to be evidentiary challenges to those at trial. However, it's very obvious that not only was Trump told repeatedly by Sidney Powell, by Ken Chesebro and others that he had lost, or they witnessed other people telling him that he had lost, but also that they didn't care about that they intended to stay put no matter what. And so it's the clearest evidence that we've had so far of the fact that this truly was a coup attempt, that it truly was an attempt not just to overthrow democracy through the riot on January 6th, but it was a slow-moving coup for every day after the November 2020 election, straight up until January 20th. And after, right? Like Trump made some bizarre comment today to the effect that, oh, did I not? Oh, I wonder if I actually gave the link. You guys are telling me nobody got the link. Wait, hang on a second here. I may have forgotten to share it. That is my bad. Let me just go post it over here on the Patreon feed. Oops. Sorry, you guys. Sometimes things go bad at the last minute, and that was not my intent. Let me just post this really quick so our people don't get left behind. So sorry, folks. All right. Here we go. And that is actually not the correct link. Hang on one second here. Give me 1 second and we are going to solve this so our people don't get left behind. I know you all understand this and you get how this goes. So thank you for your momentary patience while I solve this slight problem and we will get everything taken care of here. All right, here we go. Okie dokie. Okay. All righty. Whoop. You know, I have like 17 separate steps I have to do behind the scenes here to get everything set up in the morning. And every once in a while, one thing slips through the cracks. And this morning, it was the sharing of the link. So in any event, if you're joining us late, my apologies. That's all my fault. And nonetheless, I'm very grateful that you're here. And please hit the like button. And let's continue. Okay, so where I was at was that this is the clearest evidence we've had so far that this was an ongoing coup. And that, by the way, it's still ongoing as in terms of an attempt. Like Trump literally made this crazy statement yesterday that he thinks somehow that he's going to be returned to the presidency in advance of the November 2024 election. Nobody really knows what he means by that, but there's all sorts of other ways in which there are continuing indications that the conspiracy has not yet even stopped to this day. So look, like the summary of it is that the testimony is really bad. I mean, there's also Sidney Powell saying that she knows nothing about elections, and she says she knows fraud because she was a prosecutor for 10 years. But it's very clear that she really had no idea whether there was election fraud or not, even though also in her proffer she was claiming the election should have been overturned. She made an enormous amount of statements, though, that implicate Trump, you know, that she was in the room when certain things were said to him about the fact that they had lost. And I'm just not really sure that that there's any way out of this for Donald Trump. I guess that's the most fundamental way to put it. Assuming that the testimony that comes forward in the trial in Fulton County is consistent with what's contained in these tapes, he's done. I mean, these are 4 separate witnesses with critical information and testimony that we've never heard before about the fact that not only did he know that he had lost, not only was he told that he had lost, but also Rudy Giuliani is really seriously implicated in this. Let's not forget, because Sidney Powell relayed this crazy conversation with Rudy Giuliani in an elevator that sort of went sideways. And Mark Meadows, who knew that Trump wanted to appoint Sidney Powell as a special counsel to overthrow the election. All I have to say about this is that if this evidence comes in the way that it's reported in the tapes, Trump and the remaining defendants are really in for a world of hurt. And it's important to remember here that there is just a multitude of witnesses now, in addition to the people we know were already cooperating, like Lynn Wood, who are going to provide damning upon damning upon damning evidence of the RICO conspiracy and the related claims that have been filed against Trump and his friends in Fulton County. So it's a very bad day for him. I mean, yesterday was a very bad day for him. Today is also. And I want to point out also that his sister died yesterday, and yet Trump was spending his time on Truth Social, like completely melting down, attacking Jack Smith, attacking the other prosecutors in the DOJ. This morning, he's attacked Judge Engoron. Again, he's called for a citizen's arrest through a repost of Letitia James and Judge Engoron. That in and of itself is going to run very close to the line, if not over it, of the gag order that is in place in Engoron's courtroom, for which he's already been sanctioned twice. We're in a position right now where, as I have long predicted, we're going to see ongoing decimation of his mental state and his behavior, the closer that he gets to true accountability. So I want everybody to be really aware of that, and also to be aware that the tapes themselves are an indication of what's to come. And if you are one of those people who over the last few days, and I ranted about this yesterday for a while, who have been very concerned about the kind of indications that people are going to withhold votes for Biden and what that would mean for Trump's fascist plans. One of the things I have to say here is that I continue to be of the opinion that Trump is going to be in prison before the November 2024 election. And it is really anybody's guess what happens after that. Now, I'm not going to tell you not to mobilize ever. I think everybody has to mobilize, like lives depend on it, because they do. But I also just want people to be very, very clear on the fact that there's a long way between here and next November, and a lot of intervening things are going to happen. We've got, at minimum right now, 4 scheduled intervening trials. And that's not even including the one that's currently underway in New York. So, again, we'll have to see what happens here, but I do want people to understand that this is very, very significant evidence for purposes of Fulton County. And, it would be one thing if it was only one witness. We're talking about like 4 witnesses who have flipped now, plus everyone who has already been cooperating, whose tapes we haven't seen and whose testimony we don't know about. We got a long way to go. And I got to say that, you should be in a position of feeling at least optimistic about what that evidence is going to show and what the end result is going to be, because I am. All right, let's talk for a second about the budget, the looming budget shutdown. So everybody may remember that November 17th, a scant 3 days from now, is the next scheduled government shutdown, okay? So earlier this morning, Mike Johnson announced this proposed 2-step tier to avoid a government shutdown. Basically, what he's proposing is this laddered approach where funding for a certain number of agencies is continued through January, for another set of agencies is continued through February, and there's fundamentally no alteration to the cuts that the far right has been seeking. Well, lo and behold, also within 5 minutes of when I came on this broadcast, the Freedom Caucus, all 40 members of them in the far right House GOP, have indicated that they are not going to vote for Mike Johnson's proposal because they think that it's the equivalent of Mike Johnson laying down and rolling over to Democrats. And they want all of these cuts to, the DOJ and, various other agencies that they think they're going to be able to stop from prosecuting Trump and, other federal programs that they disagree with. And so, we're kind of where we were a month ago, but with a lot more in a potential world of hurt. Okay. So there's supposed to be a vote today at 2:45 p.m. Eastern on Mike Johnson's plan. Now we know he doesn't have the votes, because if he doesn't have the votes of the vast majority of the Freedom Caucus, I'm going to remind you all, it takes 80% of those 40 people to make a statement that they're not going to vote for it. So that means that basically he's lost 30 people, 30 votes at least inside the Freedom Caucus, which is the end of it. It's DOA. His proposal is DOA. And so we're in a place right now where, the government may shut down on Friday again. And I'm going to remind everybody that the last time we were in this position, I went and did a standalone pre-recorded video broadcast on how to help people during the government shutdown. It is available on this YouTube page. You can go watch it in the event that you are thinking about how you're going to help everybody who's about to lose benefits and money and food. I'm going to remind everybody that the vast majority of Americans, including government employees, are one paycheck away from poverty and homelessness. So, it's time to pull it together if that's the place where we end up. But, we're in a place where once again, we're standing on the edge of the cliff, and we're going to see whether or not we go all the way over it on Friday. I expect that this is going to be a very loud bit of moving news over the next couple of days. Also, in case you missed it, there have been 2 fights that have broken out inside the Capitol building this morning. One of them involves Kevin McCarthy apparently elbowing Representative Burchett in the kidneys in front of a reporter, literally shoulder checked him with an elbow while a reporter was watching, which resulted in Burchett chasing him down the hallway, screaming at him and calling him a coward and threatening him with physical violence. Okay. That's the first thing that happened already this morning. And the whole thing was witnessed by reporters, and it's now being reported all over the place on threads. The second thing that happened was that there was a fight that nearly broke out in a Senate committee between 2 senators that Bernie Sanders had to stop. And, I'm just going to tell you this, that the GOP right now, I got to remind everybody that I mean, once again, I have to quote that incredible Lindsey Graham tweet that's still apparently up that says, from 2015, that says, if we nominate Trump, we will get destroyed and we will deserve it. One of the things that I have to remind everybody about what's happening in the GOP writ large right now is they are watching what is happening with Trump and all of these indictments, right? They know that there's like now a like incredibly deep well of evidence against him and his attempt to overthrow the federal government, and that a multitude of co-conspirators were involved in what was essentially a coup. And they know that that evidence is so damning that he's likely to be in prison before November 2024. Like, they know it. They know it. They know it just like we do. They also know that they don't have an adequate replacement. They're watching the RNC debates just like we all did last week, like I did if you didn't and you watched my coverage of it. You know, they know there's nobody there who's going to be able to, you know, drum up Trump's base. And they know that if they get to the Republican National Convention and Trump's still their nominee, they're kind of like more than a little, right? They know all of this. And so one of the things that is happening right now is they're imploding. And they're imploding across the board because there's a huge chunk of the GOP that is only following instructions from Donald Trump. There's another chunk of the GOP that sees that chunk of the GOP for what it is, but still need Trump's base to get reelected. Then there's another chunk of the GOP that thinks everything the rest of the GOP is doing is insane. Okay. And they're all under an extraordinary amount of stress. Now, do I have any sympathy for that? No. They made their bed. They're lying in it. And as I've said many, many times here, and I said during the prior government shutdown before, like when your enemy is destroying themselves, you let them do it. We're not going to intervene. We're not going to back proposals that don't make any sense. We're going to do what we do as Democrats so well right now. We're going to stay in array and we're going to fight back. But I do want people to understand that it's going to get more chaotic because the GOP is rudderless. They have no leadership that isn't Donald Trump. Donald Trump is under direct and immediate threat of incarceration and direct and immediate threat of gag orders left, right, and center. He's not somebody who is going to be free and clear come the RNC next summer or the November 2024 election. He's not going to get off scot-free. I'm going to remind you all, 91 federal and state crimes in indictments in 4 different jurisdictions, plus a civil fraud case in New York that has destroyed his business already and which will probably bankrupt him. And then there's that's leaving aside E. Jean Carroll's case where she's already got millions of dollars in damages assessed against him that's going to start again in January. So there is a vast wealth of evidence coming down the pike that Trump is done, and not just like mildly done, not just like lightly done, not just going to exit the national stage, is going to be incarcerated until he dies, and simultaneously, while being incarcerated, may still be the Republican nominee for president. Okay. And they also have seen all the stats that we've talked about here on this broadcast to the effect that if he's convicted, millions of voters plan to switch their votes to Biden. If you missed that poll a week ago, Monday in the New York Times, you should go check it out. Because what that poll demonstrated, even though I have problems with that poll that we talked about a lot last week, what it demonstrated, if you're going to extrapolate and you're going to use that poll as evidence, which is questionable anyway, is that basically there's a 15-point swing to Biden if Trump is convicted of anything. So, they know what they're up against and they're kind of losing it as a result. So our job, again, and I feel like I say this all the time here now, but our job is to self-regulate in the face of chaos, right? To trust that Hakeem Jeffries knows what he's doing, to feel a little bit sorry that Bernie Sanders had to break up a fist fight and then, get screamed at by a Republican senator that he was the biggest bully in there. We should understand that that the chaos is going to get worse, right? And our job is to hold the line, and don't do anything to stop their self-immolation, because the end result of this is going to be, if we play it right and we do all of our work and we continue to mobilize, it's going to be like the end of the Republican Party in real time. So it's really important that, we are in a situation where we see all of this for what it is. Matthew, hey, hope everything's well in the UK. The Constitution of the United States does in fact allow for someone to run the country from prison. You'd be surprised if that's the case, okay? But I'm just going to tell you something, all right? The logistics of that are so ridiculous that even the Trump base is not going to be able to wrap their head around it. And that's one of the things that's really interesting about that New York Times poll, okay? Like, he could be incarcerated. He could still be the nominee. Being convicted of a crime is not going to prevent him under any constitutional provision from running. But the voters are going to look at that and be like, how's that dude going to run anything from prison, right? That's what the polling is showing at this point. And, you know, I really want everybody to just be very clear on this. I don't think there's any way that he's going to win if he is convicted in advance of November 2024. And I also don't think there's any way that he's not going to be convicted in prison in advance of 2024, the November 2024 election. But again, I got to remind everybody, we cannot get complacent. We have an absolute, yes. Okay. So to be clear about it, Julie's right about this. There's an omission on this. And this is a very valid point. The Constitution of the United States doesn't say officially, you can run the country from prison. It doesn't say that. There is an omission in it because it was never anticipated by the founding fathers and the drafters of the Constitution that there would ever be a presidential candidate trying to run the country from the clink. Okay. So it's not like it says that. All right. But it also doesn't prohibit it. And so, again, you know, who knows how this would play out in a court of law. But I'm going to tell you that I don't think we're going to have a problem on this. That does, again, I have to finish saying this every single time. Do not get complacent. Do not get complacent, right? Litigation is unpredictable. I'm the first person to tell you that. You know, like 15 years as a trial lawyer taught me that over and over and over again. And yet, the evidence here is really thick. And the GOP is falling apart. And the other thing that we have to think about here is that if Trump is in prison and people are still backing him, like Romney McDaniel made this crazy statement yesterday that even if he's convicted, the RNC is going to back him as the candidate. I mean, they're nuts. Like, they've all lost their minds, right? Like, they're literally self-destructing in real time. They are going to be destroyed if they do that. And I just want everybody to kind of like be aware that the House GOP and the Senate GOP and any person running on the campaign trail with a Trump endorsement or seeking Trump's endorsement is going to be much, much, much wilder and less rational the closer that we get to a Trump conviction. So just like, you know, buckle up and do your part to stay stable through the mess. Okay. Somebody's telling me we only have 278 likes. If you're watching this broadcast, please minimize the chat and hit that thumbs up button because it helps with the distribution of this broadcast. Don't forget to subscribe. And also, if you're not yet a subscriber over on patreon.com/resistance live, you can wander over there and become a subscriber for as little as $2 a month. And you will get to ask questions every day of the week, 2 hours before every broadcast. And also join us for Sunday coffee hour, which is super fun. Okay. We had a long conversation yesterday about the looming fascist hood off statements that Trump and his people have been making, based on the article that came out in the New York Times on Sunday, where Trump is essentially threatening to round up people and put them in camps. There was further confirmation of that this morning, where essentially the statement that has been made by the Trump camp is that they're going to round up 10 million people and put them in concentration camps. Simultaneously, campaign officials are denying those statements while also saying things like, basically like, it will be life-crushing to you when Donald Trump is returned to office. So they are what they look like. They are what they look like. And I was asked to comment on the subsequent article in Axios this morning that talks again about Project 2025. For those of you who do not know, Project 2025 is this effort that's underway by the Heritage Foundation and various Trump-related folks to plan out how Trump is essentially going to seize all executive power of the federal government on the first day that he's reelected and put all of it under his personal thumb. They are currently vetting lawyers to be in key roles in his second administration, should it come to pass, who are going to be entirely ideologues loyal only to Donald Trump. They're also vetting young people to fill senior roles in agencies in the administration who will follow Trump's beck and call. They're spending millions of dollars to do this right now. And so, one of the things that I want people to be aware of is like, I mean, I hate to say it again because we spent so much time on this, but this is not a drill. This is not a drill, right? Like, we're so far beyond the Maya Angelou quote that I quoted yesterday, right? Like this is they've been showing us who they are, and we should believe it since 2019 when they rounded up brown migrants seeking asylum in camps and separated them from their babies and put them in rooms of 40 degrees and denied them medical care during the pandemic that left them dirty, no toilets, no food, no water. We know what's coming, right? And that this effort is just a big part of it. Who's paying for it? The Heritage Foundation and other big name far-right Trump donors. That's who's paying for that. And they're determined, if he is reelected, to basically destroy democracy on day one. Like, we won't ever get a chance to vote again. I can guarantee you that. If he wins again, it's over. And they're ready for it. So people need to take it very, very seriously. Okay. Questions were asked this morning about Steve Bannon. And I just want to remind everybody that we had a hearing on his appeal last Thursday. We don't know when we're going to get a ruling on that appeal from the DC Circuit. I will just tell you that in my experience, having handled appeals in front of the DC Circuit, we've got at least 3 months until there's going to be a ruling on that. And he is out pending appeal. He's, again, this morning making comments about the fact that that 10 million people are going to be rounded up and put in camps. That statement came from him. And, I think that it's profoundly dangerous that he's still walking around. And all that said, there is also a strong possibility that he's going to be doing time before too long. But, he's going to be who he's going to be. And he is continuing to be an agitator who is seeking to destroy the federal government. His aims all along have been the destruction of the administrative state for various Christo-fascist mythologies that he believes in terms of like a fourth major world event. Like, you can go research all this stuff. It's really scary. But, we're waiting at this point for a ruling on that appeal. And he may appeal it to an en banc panel. That's the entire DC Circuit, not just the 3 judges who were assigned to the initial appeal. He may try to appeal it to the Supreme Court. We'll see. But he's not off the hook. And again, I got to remind everybody, like, this is kind of a no-brainer, right? Like, he was convicted of evading a subpoena and contempt of Congress. Like, he has no defense. And I don't think he's going to be successful on any of these appeals. So that's where we are on that. Okay. Yesterday, the Supreme Court, sua sponte, those of you who've been here for a while know that means of your own volition, issued a new code of ethics that they claim they're going to abide by. And my initial reaction was, okay, that's a good first step. And then I realized that it's self-enforcing. Like, literally, they've issued this code of ethics and they're like, we're going to police ourselves, notwithstanding the fact that, like, we've been taking millions of dollars in perks from big name Republican donors. Okay, that's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's not effective. And, Sheldon Whitehouse has been talking about this already over the last 24 hours. There's a lot of critique coming out of the legal community, myself included, about the fact that it has no teeth. This code of ethics has no teeth, does nothing. And, one of the concerns here is that they were supposed to be relying on, various forms of ethics codes for lawyers in terms of what they were doing, and they failed. They also didn't abide by the regulations that stood previously on what they were supposed to disclose. So I'm not convinced, nor should anyone else be, that this brand new code of ethics is actually going to be effective. And, we'll have to see what happens on that front. But I'm not hopeful. And I think that there's still going to be a push in the Senate for a new revised code of ethics that actually is enforceable by removal. That's what I want to see. All right. Okay. Trump trial in New York State continued yesterday. Don Jr. was back on the stand. We talked about this a little bit yesterday on the broadcast because he was on the stand while we were live. He left the stand yesterday. Basically, his entire testimony, much as I predicted, was like, here's this wonderful property that my father rescued from its decrepit state, and he had a vision for it that no one else could have imagined. And now it's worth so much more, and it's like a spectacular property. Mar-a-Lago is an American castle, and, the Doral is a high-profile property for world visitors, and like all this other garbage, okay? Now we see where this is going, because this morning, the defense has put on someone who has made the claim again, I have to laugh. I mean, again, I'm sorry, you guys. It's like, this is like the New York lawyer and me giggling about the really incredibly see-through defense that they're trying to put on. The claim now is that because these properties were actually undervalued on, in reality, the fact that they were overvalued on the financial statements balances it out. And, again, I have to say, kudos to Judge Engoron, because he immediately was like, that's not the way this works. And the AG's office was like, that's not the way this works. And Engoron was like, you're right. That's not the way any of this works. So, they're clearly not going to succeed in front of Engoron in this claim that the properties were somehow worth so much more than what was on the financial statement. So if they were technically inflated for some window of time, therefore it all balances out. Like, again, I got to remind you all, one of the things that I used to do when I was a federal court lawyer was defend accounting firms. And there is literally nothing in generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP, which we've talked about here a lot on the broadcast since this trial began. There's nothing in GAAP that says that that's legitimate accounting. Nothing. Like nothing. In fact, quite the contrary. So we're really not in a place where the defense is going well for them. And this should come as no surprise. This is one of the reasons why Trump is out this morning attacking Engoron and calling for the citizen's arrest of Engoron and Letitia James through his repost and all that other stuff, because he knows he's lost. He's already lost on fraud on the merits, and he knows that he has no defense. So what he's seeking to do is portray himself as a victim. And when this enormous multi-million-dollar fine, which is absolutely in the offing, comes down from Judge Engoron, he's going to claim that he's been targeted and the whole thing is bias. I don't think an appeals court is going to buy a moment's wit of it, but it's what he's doing to play to his base. And, he wants to be a martyr so that he can fundraise, and he wants to be a martyr so that people stay with him and feel sorry for him and continue to support him. And all of that is extremely consistent with what narcissists do in court. One of the things that they're notorious for, whether it's like your average divorcing deadbeat dad, or whether it's someone as significant as Donald Trump, is that they play the victim, even when their own conduct is actually what's unlawful. And I'm personally not surprised by this at all. I think we're going to see much more of it. I think we're going to see him play the victim and the martyr all the way through every single one of these trials. And, that doesn't mean that he's going to lose. It also doesn't mean that he's got a defense, or that he has any legal leg to stand on. Much like, deadbeat dads who claim that they deserve money, or that they haven't done anything wrong. They don't have a legal leg to stand on either, and neither does Donald Trump. So everyone should be seeing this also through the lens of his complete malignant narcissism, because it's all about what he has to do to continue to feed his narcissistic supply so that he doesn't have to be confronted with the reality that he's in fact at fault, which then confirms what we've all described here as the vast pit of nothingness of his soul that all malignant narcissists live with. So again, the New York trial is very triggering for him. We've talked about this a lot, because what it is about is essentially an end to the mythology of his wealth and his success, which again has been the primary source of his narcissistic supply throughout his entire adult life. And, no less than his sister, who passed away yesterday, has called him a fraud and called him a liar and, called out his incredibly poor behavior and everything else. And that's probably one of the reasons why he's not mourning her in any way, shape, or form, because malignant narcissists, will demonize anybody who actually tells the truth about them. So here we are. That's the news for today, my friends. I want to remind you all that in addition to becoming a paid subscriber over on Patreon, we're running this incredible community called the Atelier Gaia that you can get in on. Go to Atelier, A-T Gaia, which is GAIA.com, to learn more. We had an incredible community salon there yesterday for our hundreds of members, although we had small attendance yesterday, but lots of people watch it on the replay, about preparation for 2024 and key Senate races to watch and key House races that people need to be aware of. And we're organizing people into regional groups inside the Atelier for the Pacific Northwest, the West Southwest, the Midwest, and Chicagoland, as one of our members has affectionately called it, the Northeast and the South. And each of those regional groups are going to be responsible for cross-pollination of efforts inside the Atelier as we head into 2024. So if you're interested in getting in on that, head on over to Atelier Gaia and become a member. The subscription rates are fairly low. It's like $26.99 a month, or you can pay on an annual rate and get 2 months off. So I really want people to kind of like start thinking about what you're going to do as we head into 2024, because we've really got so much work to do. So much work to do. It's like blowing my mind. And, you know, we've got to get started now. We need a plan for 2024. And we're going to be a big part here and inside the Atelier and over on the Patreon feed in organizing everyone in this fabulous community, which is thousands and thousands of people worldwide. By the way, we had like, I don't know, 700,000 views of this broadcast on YouTube last month. So, you know, we're in a position where like the viewership is growing. You should share this broadcast. But also, as always, I want to remind you, we're not here for clickbait. We're not here to just drive likes. Okay. We're actually here to make sure that everybody in this audience is motivated and educated on how they can make a difference to change the world for the better and ensure that democracy survives. So we're a little bit different from a lot of the other folks who are out there doing this kind of thing on YouTube, because we actually care about you. We're not here for the money. We want you to actually be out there doing the work, and we're doing the work ourselves. We practice what we preach. So much love to all of you. I will catch you all here tomorrow, regular time, if not before. And I will catch you. I will catch you at regular time tomorrow. I already said that. Bleh, my brain is fried. All right. I'll see you all tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Bye.